Well, welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Youth Room podcast. Today we're going to be talking about menu versus roadmap. And so if you're wondering what we're talking about, stay tuned.
And I love this quote by Tom Landry. It says, leadership is getting someone to do what they don't want to do to achieve what they want to achieve.
61% of our kids said they had shared the gospel with a lost friend in the past 3 months. 20% of our kids had led a lost friend to Christ in the past 3 months.
So like when we say, hey, look, there's a lost and dying world that needs Jesus, we're not going to care about the temperature in the room, the comfortability of the chairs.
Yeah.
Like, I think a clear person that has a personal trainer mentality or a roadmap mentality would know the answer to a question of how do I grow closer to Jesus or how to become more like Jesus.
Hey, I asked my kids what activities they want to do.
Yeah.
I'm doing these activities and they're not showing up. Yeah. It's like, what's going on?
And like, this is our goal. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you guys doing to help students achieve that or to help students? And they're like, it's basically like similar to like my 5-year-old having a temper tantrum on the floor because I won't give him macaroni and cheese and ice cream. Like, I mean, we have at some point need to just say, hey, this is not what's good for you. Like, this is what's best for you by going through this process, by being held accountable, by learning biblical truth, by growing and getting fit in your relationship with the Lord.
Now, Keith, this is something that you and I have talked about quite a bit, but I want to give a warning to our listening audience, whether watching or listening. We want to give them a warning because if you implement what we're talking about today, you will have more mature disciples. Now, why am I giving a warning? Well, because they will bring more students to your youth group. Yes. And so we want to help you be prepared for that. So if you're going to implement what we're talking about today, make sure you follow the link below in the description to our free online community, the Youth Ministry Mastermind. We have tons of resources in there, all free, such as a new believers workbook, great ideas for how to measure these things and all these different things you can implement. So if you put these into practice, you're going to see more new believers at your youth ministry, which is going to create more work for you. But we've done the work of hopefully making that easier. So again, click that link in the description, join the Youth Ministry Mastermind, as have hundreds
Which
of
also,
other
I mean, not just the free resources, but the community of people
Absolutely.
that you can pull resources from as far as just asking questions. Yeah. We have a lot of great, solid leaders in there that contribute. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So please take advantage of that. But today we're going to be talking about a menu versus roadmap. And Keith, this is actually something that you shared with me early on in ministry. And for somebody who grew up in the church, I didn't really see it this way until you shared it with me, and I'm sure somebody shared it with you, but it kind of changed the way I saw everything, and I realized how much I was doing was falling into maybe more of what the world's view says we should be doing versus what God says. And so I'd love for you to kind of introduce this idea to our listening audience and maybe help them understand what we're going to be talking about today.
Definitely, yeah. So I think a lot of the youth leaders that we talk to, and this is something that I had to personally fight against as well, is that we kind of fall into one or two different categories, like two different roles when it comes to leading youth ministries. Is we tend to think of ourselves as a waiter or a server, like at a restaurant, versus a personal trainer. And I'll explain what I mean by that, and that has to do with the menu versus roadmap. Is, a waiter, think of the characteristics of a server in a restaurant. They come, they serve, they present you with a menu that has tons of different options. The customer then gets to choose a variety of different flavors or whatever they're feeling like eating, and then the waiter just brings it to them. And I think we have a heart to serve. Like, I think that's, the motivation there is just hey, we want to serve these students. We want to serve their families. But what that can lead to that might be more harmful is that we just focus on providing a whole bunch of different options on a menu for them to choose from. And because of that, there's not like a clear progression. There's not a clear, growth path in our programs and our focus on what we do as a ministry. And so it seems like there's just a whole bunch of unconnected dots. Like whenever I go to the Cheesecake Factory, I don't know if many of our listeners, I guess it's a national chain. So if they've ever been there, they bring out this menu book and it's like, you can get everything from like a Greek salad to a burrito. Yeah. And there's just, it's the most random, seemingly random stuff. And then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're known for cheesecakes. and so, but the menu is like, so, there's so many different varieties of things. And I think that's more descriptive of a lot of youth ministries that I see is that there's so many different things that they do and none of them seem to be connected, or at least they're not connected, to help someone go through like a known path. The other mention I had is either a waiter or a personal trainer. Think of what a personal trainer does. So someone comes to them and they say, hey, I want to live more healthy. I want to exercise. I want to lose weight. I want to get more in shape, whatever. And this personal trainer is one, already fit themselves, which is a key component. Yeah, hopefully. Like, I don't know if I would use a personal trainer that's extremely overweight or something, but they're living out these truths themselves, and they're helping the person that wants to meet these goals as well to walk through a process that will help them, grow towards that goal. So I think as youth leaders, and we see this, this in the New Testament, Paul uses training analogies, athlete analogies, like, and so when it comes to this, we shouldn't be surprised. Like, this is kind of the focus on helping students. Now, what we have is a menu that we've created in youth ministries where there's tons of stuff to choose from, which kind of breeds a consumeristic mentality in our students. It actually hinders the progress. Just think of it as like a kid that only wants to eat macaroni and cheese and ice cream. Like, it's because that's what we've given them. Like, it's and so they're upset with us when we challenge them spiritually, or when when we try to get them on track to grow, or we share hard truths or hold them accountable. So if this is happening, that's a symptom of, that's basically like similar to like my 5-year-old having a temper tantrum on the floor because I won't give him macaroni and cheese and ice cream. Like, I mean, we have at some point need to just say, hey, this is not what's good for you. Like, this is what's best for you by going through this process, by being held accountable, by learning biblical truth, by growing and getting fit in your relationship with the Lord. And I love this quote by Tom Landry. He says, leadership is getting someone to do what they don't want to do to achieve what they want to achieve. And so oftentimes, if the student's heart is the Lord's, like if they're actually a follower of Christ, they want to grow in the relationship with Christ. But sometimes it's hard. Not sometimes. It's all the time hard, to actually do the hard things, like to say no to certain things in their life that they need to prune out, to say yes to the right disciplines. And so I think we as youth leaders need to see ourselves more as the personal trainer rather than just the waiter that serves up the menu, so we've created this overweight consumeristic culture spiritually where they just want to pick and choose what they want instead of go through a process of being guided to what they need.
Well, and I mean, obviously this is biblical, where in 1 Corinthians 3, Paul says, I fed you with milk, not solid food, for you were not ready for it. And even now you are not ready. And I think a lot of times, Paul recognizes here, he's like, look, I'm starting you off with what you need, not necessarily what you think you want, but what you need. But a lot of times, to use that personal training analogy, what we would do if we were following, again, the consumeristic view, is as a personal trainer, we'd be like, hey, well, I'll just, what do you want to do? And it's like, well, I want to get fit. It's like, okay, well, here's what we need to do in order to get fit. I don't want to do that. And it's like, well, if I don't want to lose my client, well, okay, then I'll just kind of do what they want to do. And it's like, well, just eat whatever you want, and I'll open you just want to do, upper body. Well, then we'll just do upper body. And it's like, you're giving them what you want in order to try and keep them. But at the end of the day, you're kind of neglecting the whole point of why you're there. And that might sound harsh, but I think it's easy for us to fall into that, because if we view success as the amount of kids we have and the least amount of parent emails and phone calls we get, it's easy to fall into that being success. But if we really see as our job to train up disciples, who will go and make disciples, it changes everything. But we've talked a little bit philosophically. Could you maybe give the listener like specific examples of, like, if you saw a youth ministry that was engaging in this, you'd be like, this is more of a menu approach versus this is how a youth ministry with a roadmap approach kind of operates. Could you maybe speak specifically?
Well, so ministry? Even just the personal trainer aspect of, okay, what are your goals? Like, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next, 5 weeks, or whatever. Okay. So like, if I talk to a youth leader and say, hey, what are some of the, the outcomes, the vision that you have for your ministry? And if they're like, like, I know kind of like they're kind of aimless. Like they don't really have a clear, an end goal is like the first step. Yeah. Like to say, hey, this is where we want to pray towards. We want to have a bold vision, a destination. This is, what we want to aim for. Of course, like spiritual things. Yeah. And I think, and we've gotten some pushback on this too. When we've mentioned like setting goals in ministry, it's like, how dare you? Like, just leave it up to the Lord. It's like, well, there was, tangible evidence in the New Testament that Paul was like, I want to share the gospel with all Gentiles. Yeah. So it's like, that's a bold vision that was, that came to fruition. He said, the whole continent of Asia has heard the gospel. Yeah. Okay. So I'm saying, like, with that, so I think we can, for people that might push back on any kind of goals like that, of course, we leave the results up to the Lord, but we want to, have activities that we pray towards and we ask. Our pastor at our church had a really good sermon yesterday about prayer and how, it comes down to, it's like when you boldly ask for things, then God will usually like be delighted that you're coming to him to ask him for things. Like, so what are we going to pray towards, as a goal? But that roadmap mentality is very obvious if they have a clear goal in mind. But then sometimes what gets fuzzy is the steps to actually get there. It's like, this is our goal. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you guys doing to help students achieve that, or to help students? And they're like, so like, you have to realize like that there's lots of different things that they might be doing that they might have inherited from the previous youth leader, or just what the church has done, that don't really fit into that. And so a menu mentality has what seems like unconnected dots that really don't have connection to what the vision or the outcome, driven goal, the bold vision of the ministry fits into.
So specific for youth ministry, unconnected dots would seemingly be
like, they might do an annual event. They might do certain types of events that don't really connect, to what they're trying to do. Certain programs, even weekly programs, might not fit into. It's like, because that's just what we always did, so we must keep doing it. But even just restructuring those programs to focus more on training rather than just consumeristic aspect. So like a youth ministry, I've heard of, like they have like maybe like a Wednesday night program, but then they have like an open gym night that has nothing to do with their goals. But the students come, but it's not even the same students that come to the youth ministry. Like, are they using it for outreach, or sometimes it can just be tweaked to where it fits into more of a roadmap. So we're not saying like get rid of all your programs. We're not saying get rid of everything that you've ever done. It's just, are they fitting into a roadmap that helps clearly guide students in a journey? And sometimes it's all in their brain.
Yeah.
So like they're like, oh yeah, we're focused on a roadmap, but if you ask anybody in the ministry, they're like, what? I've never heard that before.
Well, yeah, I think if you ask the kid, like, what's the outcome, if they can tell you or not. Another thing I see a lot of, of course, we're both a part of youth pastor Facebook groups, and those sometimes can be a scary place to go.
Yes.
But one of the things I think we see a lot of, and there's a lot of good that comes out of it too. I don't want to, just act like it's all bad. We're in there, so it's like, but
are you good?
I don't know if we're helping or hurting, but one of the things that I see is somebody going, hey, I asked my kids what activities they want to do.
Yeah.
I'm doing these activities and they're not showing up.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on? And I think it's that idea of, if I go to a personal trainer and I say, hey, here are the exercises I want to do, and the personal trainer says, okay. And then all of a sudden I look and I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting in shape. It's like, well, yeah, of course, because they're just giving you what you want. And so if they see, hey, these are the activities and the events I want to do, and I know next episode we're going to get more into kind of the event planner versus, youth pastor. But if I'm getting what I want, it's like, well, I can do that anywhere. Like, I can get this stuff anywhere. So now why am I coming?
Yeah.
And I think what draws kids' attention is, and what gets people to refer a personal trainer or keep coming back, is like, this person is going to help me do the things I don't want to do to get where I need to be.
Yep.
And that's biblical as well, where Paul says, I do the things I do not want to do. And so we want to help kind of in that battle and in that fight.
Yep. We also might have several different classes, and then this might be systemic in churches as well. So like, this is not just youth ministry. Like, we went through a process at our church of like really considering like, okay, when someone comes to our church, is it just like a menu of different options and they're like, they're not like a, start here.
Yeah.
and then like progress through this, series of classes or group, or like they build on each other or whatever. And I think so some of that can just be systemic in your own church.
Yeah.
So like, it's not like you can move the whole ship sometimes, but you can kind of start where you are. I think a clear person that has a personal trainer mentality or a roadmap mentality would know the answer to a question of, how do I grow closer to Jesus, or how to become more like Jesus once I became a Christian. So like, do you have a process for that? Like, do you have, like, what would you tell someone like that? And I think a tendency to not have, or people that might not have answers to that, is because they've not experienced a new believer. So they're not really even thought about like, okay, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, what do I tell them, or what do, it's like, and that's why we created the new believer booklet. Cause it was like, we didn't see like a lot of great resources on like helping a student walk through those early seasons of being a new believer. When someone wants to become a disciple maker, so we talk about the 4 chairs of disciple making. That would be a roadmap. So it's like, okay, no matter where you are in your faith journey, like, you're one in 4 chairs. So chair 1 is non-believer, where you haven't trusted Christ yet. Chair 2 is believer, but maybe because of time or maybe just, lack of commitment yet, you haven't really grown in that relationship, very much. So you might be like name only, like nominal Christian. And then there's chair 3, which is worker, who are actively serving. They might even be bringing people to church or like, bringing them into your youth ministry. But then you want to get students to get to chair 4, where they're making disciples. And you had some recent survey results. So the way that we've talked about this before in previous episodes, that the way that you can find out your 4-chair, breakdown in your youth ministry is you can survey them. You can communicate the 4 chairs before you survey them. So they're like, what is this? So that should be on the forefront of your youth ministry. Like whenever you're talking about programming, like talk about the 4 chairs, bring them up. And then ideally, like maybe once a quarter, maybe twice a year, be a great, just to have some data on what that breakdown is. And so you recently polled your students. Share about the breakdown that kind of surprised you.
Yeah,
and where they are on the roadmap.
Yes, so we started using the 4-chair survey in April of 2022. When they first took it back then, the average score was 2.03, meaning the average student in our youth ministry was a baby Christian. And I looked back on that and realized that was on me. That was not on them. I was falling into the menu approach. I was, hey, what topics do you guys want to talk about? Let's do that. Hey, what events do we think kids would like? Let's do that. And when we made the shift, fast forward now, 2.5 years, and we took our 4-chair surveys, and the average score was a 3.6, which blew me away because our previous high was like 3.2, which was still really good.
And what does that mean? So for people that might not understand, what do you mean by 3 point? Like how can you be 0.2 a chair? So just tell them how you got those numbers and the average.
Yeah, we have them take the surveys. We score the individual survey. Again, we're not posting the results or anything like that. It's just between me and them. And I score the survey, and then I take all the surveys up and get the average. And that lets me know where the average kid in our ministry is. But it also lets me know how many are in chair 1, chair 2.
Well, and so it's clear or maybe it's important to emphasize that students don't select something in between the chairs.
Correct.
So they're not like, oh, I feel like I'm a 3.2 or whatever. So it's just the average of, you might have, 5 chair 2s and 10 3s, whatever, and then the average out.
And so so the average chair being 3.6 means the average student in our youth ministry is engaging in the Great Commission, is growing in their faith, and is growing towards the point of they're actively discipling people following behind. So they're helping engage in the work of Christ. And the number that really shocked me, number one, 61% of our kids said they had shared the gospel with a lost friend in the past 3 months. And
it's 61%.
Yep, 61% is our highest yet. And then 35% of our kids who were surveyed, 35% scored in chair 4. And the reason why that's important is if you get 10% in your ministry, you need 10% of true believers, has kind of been this observed, cultural phenomenon. If you get 10% of true believers, it changes the whole culture.
Yeah, and that's not even just with Christianity. If you get like a culture to buy in with 10%, 10% of the culture to buy in any belief.
Yeah.
They'll
spread it. And so 35% means that over a third of our kids, so to put it this way, 20% of our kids had led a lost friend to Christ in the past 3 months. So it's like, it just kind of made sense. It's like, no wonder we're seeing all these kids trust Christ, because these kids are sharing their faith and they're leading kids to Christ.
Well, and it's important to say too, we're not talking, because I know with percentages, people are like, okay, he has 10 kids, 3 of them are disciple makers. Yeah. So you can say, okay, 30% of but what, talk about how many students did you survey? What does your youth ministry look like?
Yeah, so we just did all the surveys on one night. We had, just for the viewer's sake, we had 115 students there. 8 were first-time visitors that night, so we didn't count theirs. We scored them so I could know where they were, but they didn't go into our average, because to me it's like you just came for the first night.
Yeah.
You might not know the language yet, which is culture and things like that. So that 30,
was that a deterrent for them? Do they seem weirded out by?
No, I think it actually makes them think about it.
Okay. And where did they score? Were they unbelievers?
A lot of them are chair 1, chair 2. And if they come back, I'll have a conversation with them and be like, hey, I just want to let you know, you put this down. Could you share with me more about that? And Yeah, but we do it a lot, and we have the first timers take it, and they never seem like weirded out by it because it's just what we do. But yeah, so that 35% represents 37 students. So 37 students in our ministry at that night scored in chair 4, meaning that they're actively making disciples. So one of the prompts for chair 4 is, I have made a disciple who has made a disciple.
Yeah.
So, you think of if 35% of your youth group, for us 37 kids, can say yes to that, I have made a disciple, made a disciple.
Well, and also the way that you score them, or the surveys. So, we've done different things over the years, but I think the most helpful is to use the questions that are more objective.
Yep.
In other words, like, because I've asked students just to self-identify which chair they're in. Like, they're just like, oh, I feel like I'm in chair 4.
Yeah.
And you kind of give them parameter, like you talk about it, you define it, whatever, but at the same time, like that can be so variable.
Yeah.
But I like the way that we're doing it now, where we're actually having them fill out a series of questions, like how they answer a question will determine what chair they're in.
Yeah.
And that's more objective as far as like, how, and of course, like there's so many people that might say, well, you can't grade discipleship, or, and we're not trying to, like, we're not saying like, this is definite, like, of course, before the Lord, like we don't know, like, ultimately where students are. They could be self-deceived, like they, but that's why I like the answering the certain questions will help them, if they're honest about the questions, like it'll actually help determine where they are.
Yeah.
A lot more accurate than just saying like, I feel like I'm a 2, or, and so that's good.
Well, and if anybody wants to learn more about that, again, click the description below and join, and we have some more materials on that. But in the remaining time, I think one of the questions, if I'm listening to this and I have a menu approach, well, kids are coming because they like what we're doing. So if we make this shift,
or worse, kids are not coming because they don't like what we're doing.
True.
Which that's happened to me, like what you're saying about the personal trainer that, like, someone comes with them a list, like, I only want to do these exercises. It's like, okay, and then they're not surprised by the result. Yeah. So when I first came to Prince William, so we're at a multi-site church. I was at the larger location, the first location, and then came out to here, and the upperclassmen were like, we want to do the same things that the other location is doing. So I started doing them. Guess who didn't show up? The people that were complaining that they wanted this. And so that's what I had to realize. I was like, sometimes, it's like, get feedback, of course. But a lot of times sometimes it's like that 5-year-old kid that just wants ice cream and macaroni and cheese all the rest of their life. Like, and we have to, it's like, no, this is not good for you. Like, just have, this certain type of event, or, so, okay, sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're all good.
So how do you make that shift?
Well, I think we've covered kind of how to make that shift in terms of, I would say setting goals, measure what matters, and things like that. We've talked about those things. Those are part of the gospel advancing values. And 4 chairs is a great way to measure what matters. Setting a bold vision, we've talked about that. A goal for gospel conversations or new believers, or, you can measure whatever. Minutes in prayer, you can do whatever you want. But I think really where this becomes a painful shift, and I'd love for you to, spend our last few minutes talking about it, is it's really moving from a consumeristic mindset, as we've talked about, to helping people realize that it's not about you. Yeah. And that can be very offensive. That can be a painful process. So, in the time we have left, I would love for you to kind of talk through, how do you help kind of facilitate that change to where you get people to realize it's not about you? And then to maybe just some encouragement for a youth leader who wants to make this shift, but they know that they've built their ministry on kind of this menu, or their church has built their church on kind of this menu. And again, we're not saying that you're doing anything immoral. I just think we're missing the greater point. Well, what would you say to somebody who is trying to make that shift to help kids go from, well, I don't like that, or that's not what I want, to it's not about you?
Yeah, I would say, sometimes it's important to emphasize a bold vision to get their minds off themselves. So like when we say, hey, look, there's a lost and dying world that needs Jesus, we're not going to care about the temperature in the room or the comfortability of the chairs. Yeah. Like, so like to shift that consumer mindset to outward focus, that's the real challenge, right? That's like what we want to do. And of course, we have a saying in our church, like, let the word do the work. Like, preach the word and you'll see that Jesus cared about other people. Yeah. Like that he, Matthew 9, like he looked at the crowds and had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. They're harassed and helpless. So if they're so consumed or focused on just what, the activities that they want to do, I would say challenge them to go out in the community, like take your whole youth ministry out, depending on the size of it. That might be a logistical nightmare, but take them out to the local, watering hole, town square, mall, whatever.
Yeah.
And even if you're not at the point where you can take them to a go share day, like where you just go out there and just share the gospel with random strangers, go there and have them just break up into twos and go sit on a bench and just watch people and imagine them facing eternity without Jesus. I think they'll come back and be like, what do we need to do to help these people?
Or when you go to school, tell them to
walk the hallways within. I was just, I was at my school that I graduated high school from. We spoke at an FCA last week, and even the office lady where I checked in, she was like, "Oh yeah, you can wait until all the kids clear out, and then you can walk back." I was like, "No," I was like, "I love walking through the crowd, like swimming upstream, because there's so many faces I get to see, and I can pray for everybody to see. They don't know that I'm praying for them, but so have them pray for the lost, like have them actually go out and observe like people, and I think that it'll shift their focus to their own wants and desires, like to like, wow, this matters, and then how can we train to accomplish this? So I would say just shift their focus outwardly by showing them the need and giving them a bold vision on how you're going to help with that need.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hopefully this was beneficial to you all today. I know this has been a huge shift in our ministry that I've just been amazed at what God's done with it. And so, again, please check out, 4-Chair Discipling by Dan Spader is a great book on this. There are other methods as well, but begin to put that roadmap approach in. Begin to sit down with your leaders or key leaders and kind of say, hey, when a kid leaves our ministry or graduates our ministry, what do we want? What is success? What is the destination we're working towards, and continue to do that. So again, check out the link in the description for all of that. We'd love to hear your feedback. Like, share, subscribe. We would love to continue to encourage, train, and equip youth pastors and youth leaders across the nation and across the world. Just continue to mobilize teens to reach their friends with the gospel. And so we appreciate you guys taking some time today, and we'll see y'all on the next episode.